Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here for our Survivor 47 cast preview. Day 7. Day several. Back here with the guy who talked to everybody before the game. It's Mike Bloom.
Yes, we have several -1 more castaways to talk about, Rob, here on day several. And today, we got to talk about Luvu. We got to talk about Gata. And our last group said, well, Tuku play at that game. We're talking about the Tuku tribe, our final group here in these previews.
All right, Tuku tribe. Surprising we have not had Tuku tribe yet. It feels very much like, okay, ChatGPT, give me 10 tribe names for the next season. Feels like Tuku would have been on that list.
I mean, we've had Taku, we've had Tiva, we've had Tika. We've been circling this Tuku train for the better part of 8 years, Rob, and now we have finally landed on Tuku as we talk about our first two members today, Gabe and Caroline.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about first up is going to be Caroline. And of course, if you missed any of our previous 6 days, you can get this all in our Survivor podcast feed, robswebsite.com/subscribe. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. All right, tell me about Caroline.
So Caroline is 27, coming up on like the 20th anniversary of that being culturally relevant.
Mm-hmm.
She is
my sweet spot. Yeah.
And well, she is going to become an outcast or an outcastaway, as it were. She is 27 years old. Caroline is originally from Evanston, Illinois. And at the time we were talking, she just graduated from business school with her MBA, and she was on her way to going back to her full-time 9-to-5, which is as a strategy consultant.
Okay, well, that's what it says on my business card, me and Steven.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't that the theme of Island of the Idols, was basically strategy consultants?
Mm-hmm, yes, okay. But what does a real-life strategy consultant do?
I mean, she describes it, I think, a lot more efficiently and effectively than I will do right now. But basically, it's advising companies as to how to proceed with their marketing, their products, basically trying to tailor business to whatever goals they might set for themselves. It sort of is like out-of-house consulting when it comes to how to proceed from a tactical perspective.
Okay. All right. Anything else about Caroline you want to set up before we go?
No, I mean, very excited to talk to her. As will become very clear immediately, she and I have one big thing in common, which was very great to connect with her over.
Ooh, this is like a Brant Steele.
Yes, exactly. I think it has a lasting impact, Rob. I'll say that.
All right, there you go. All right, so let's listen to Mike talk with Caroline and then come back and talk about it right after this.
Well, let's start with something nice and easy. Why don't you give me your name, your age, and your occupation?
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Caroline. I am 27 years old, and I just finished my MBA at Northwestern, and now I'm going to go back to my previous job, which was as a strategy consultant.
Well, congratulations. I imagine that was, quite rigorous, but now you have a degree to show for it. So strategy consultant. Obviously, we'll talk about a different type of strategy that you'll be consulting on, but what does that involve for you?
So at the firm that I work at, basically we are working with like Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest companies in the US, and I'm on teams that are telling them what their strategy should be. Like, how is it that they want to be like, number one in market share? How is it that they're going to like beat their competitors? All of these things I've done professionally for 3 years. And yeah, it's just what I've been doing. And it's a lot of fun. Granted, I'm still like, I'm a junior person, so I'm not necessarily the person who is coming up with the exact strategy. That's for like the 50-year-old partners. But what I'm doing is I'm in the rooms and I'm trying to think about, what is going to help influence the client to actually, figure out what their strategy is, and like, how do we help persuade people? How is it that I can help find the analysis to confirm what their strategy should be? Like I'm rambling a little bit in all honesty, but yeah, that is my job.
Well, yeah. So what has you kind of surging to the front and being those people to hopefully engineer these strategies to get you to the end of the game? Tell me about your history with Survivor and what made you decide that this is a game you wanted to play.
Absolutely. So I've been a fan of Survivor since the very beginning. I've been a fan since I was 5 years old, and it just like really grasped me from such a young age. Well, originally I love the show because I thought, wow, like people are so happy when they win challenges. And I think that energy and excitement drew me in, honestly. But as I got older and understood the show more, I learned like, no, this is a show where like people are just really at their like sometimes they're at their lowest. They're like challenged like to a degree you would never think possible, and look at how they're able to persevere and overcome and like actually like accomplish insane incredible things. That is what really helped me like just stick with the show, absolutely fall in love with it. And it really meant a lot to me, I think, because growing up I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. And
Mm.
honestly, like I just felt like a failure growing up. So I have ADHD, and the way that this impacted me was I didn't understand why so many things that just seem to come so easily to people, like finishing homework, getting things done on time, it just did not come naturally to me. And it was one of those things where when you feel like you're constantly failing, it's hard to motivate yourself to keep going. But I would watch Survivor, and it was always when people were at their very lowest. It was when people just didn't feel like they were able to continue, when they did continue. And when Jeff encouraged them to keep going, that is when they thrived. That is when they succeeded. And it was that motivation, determination, and like learning that perseverance through Survivor helped me continue to like, you know what? I can be a badass. I just need to stick with it. I need to keep working hard. And like that determination and grit, honestly, like I've been able to accomplish so much in my life because of that. I went to UC Berkeley, one of the most like competitive and intense schools out there, graduated with high honors, Phi Beta Kappa, got into this like really insane prestigious consulting company where I'm like helping advise strategy. And I've actually done so well there that they actually paid for my entire MBA program. So like I've
Wow.
been able to achieve a lot. Yeah, I'm really proud of it. But like I haven't like I'm still not done yet. There's still like the ultimate thing to achieve, which is like kill it on Survivor and like show that like young girl who started watching it that like I am just as badass and like fantastic as the people who I watched growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely candid. I've been very recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I think to your point, it is this like almost epiphany of like, oh, I didn't realize that other people don't think the way that I do, and it can feel like a detractor. But I think what you've been able to vocalize so beautifully is to like realize that that can be turned around and fashioned into your own weapon in a way that allows you to think creatively and think outside the box, which I think works perfectly in a game like Survivor where people thrive in that environment.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I feel like I'm curious if this was your experience too. Growing up with ADHD, like our brains work differently. To succeed and to do things, we have to figure out our own way of doing it. And not only does it end up working out really well when we figure it out, but the resilience and the determination that you've had to build to actually be able to figure it out and accomplish it, like that, I honestly think is going to be one of my secret weapons out here. Is just the fact that I've like felt so beaten down growing up and been able to be so resilient even with that.
So looking back upon Survivor and you know the years that you've watched since you were that kid, give me one winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Absolutely. So I would say not let me think first of like the non-winners.
Because
Who
there's
I
a lot
resonate
more to think of in that variety.
so many more. I really resonate. Okay, I'm gonna give you two. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I feel
Please.
like I really resonate with both Emily from season 45 and Tori from season 42. I feel like I
Hmm.
am a mix of both of them in terms of like, well, what I loved about both is that their bluntness, honestly, I found it so refreshing. Like, yes, they gave hot takes and like it irritated like other people on the tribe, but like their takes were correct. Like they were fantastic takes, honestly. And I love that style of bluntness. And that, but I think in terms of Emily, she's a bit professional, and I do think that when you get to know me, I do have a little bit like a professional edge to me. But at the like at the end of the day, I do think I'm someone who just really cares about people and is really motivated to get to learn and understand people. And I think when you get to like learning more about Tori, I feel like that's her vibe as well.
Hmm.
So there's a couple non-winners. I feel like I haven't seen a winner or none come to mind where I'm like, this is me. Like I can really resonate. This might be an issue. We're gonna find out. But I really like Marianne because I do think, okay, I can be competitive and intense. I feel like I've already even been kind of intense in this interview. But if I'm just like chill, having a good time, I don't think I'm as bubbly as Marianne. She is like another level. But I do think I tend to be like kind, sweet, bubbly, loving to get to know people. And sometimes like, people like they don't really think that you're a threat. They kind of discount you. Like people don't think you can be nice and competent at the same time. So I'm hoping that people will underestimate me, but if I can like show them my bubbly side.
So we mentioned it a bit ago, but what would you say is your biggest superpower and your biggest piece of kryptonite that you are bringing into this game?
It's been really nice, like, just kind of, like, reflecting on this, like, journey and process because there's so many ways I do think that my ADHD is really going to help me out here. One
Hmm.
piece of that is the resilience. I'm so used to feeling like again, feeling like I'm failing at, like, silly things that everyone finds, like, really easy to do, but I think it's also that I just because of that, I've gotten used to putting myself in uncomfortable situations and feeling like I have been able to persevere and do well even with them. Um, Another piece of that with the ADHD is, like, funny enough, a part of it that, like, you don't really hear about too much with ADHD, but, like, sometimes, like, we have more like, we feel emotions more strongly than other people,
Hmm.
and that's I do think that's part of, like, maybe also gonna be a kryptonite. I think it's one of those things where if, like, you sit me down and say, like, "How are you doing?" Like, I have trouble hiding how I am doing. If I'm doing well, if I'm not doing well, like, I show it on my face. I'm an expressive person. But I think because of, like, I wear my emotions on my sleeve, I'm really able to connect with people and resonate with people. And I think people feel like they're able to read me, so people feel like they can trust me. People feel like they get me. And there are a lot of parts of myself that I do show, what people won't expect is that I'm actually very strategic and logical. Like when I'm making decisions, I am taking a step back, I'm stripping all the emotion. It's hard to do,
Hmm.
but I'm very methodical about what is my goal, what do I want to achieve, and what am I going to have to do to achieve it. Again, it's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel good, but that's what I've had to deal with my whole life, and that's what I'm able to do. So, those the parts of myself I think are going to be my superpower, my kryptonite. I show my emotions. Like I have a very like I think I'm going to be crying. I'm not happy about it. I think I'll be embarrassing myself on TV, but you know what? I've accepted it. It's what's going to happen. Um
It comes with the territory. You're starving on a beach in your underwear for 26 days. Embarrassment just kind of comes part and parcel with it.
oh, 100%. It's going to happen. I'm ready for it. But I do think that's going to be part of like the kryptonite there. Oh, and I do think one more part of it, it's kind of related, like just in the business that I've been in and like especially with like strategy consulting, like we have really tight timelines. We're working 70 hours a week. In order to get shit done, you have to be blunt. You have to give feedback,
Hmm.
you receive feedback, and it's just the way we operate. Like I'm very blunt with my friends, I'm very blunt with my family. I operate under the assumption that like we get to be honest with each other. We know it's with the best intentions and we move forward. It's why I love people who are blunt on Survivor. But like we've seen it time and time again, women who are blunt, it's not taken well. So I'm aware of it. I'm going to be working to restrain myself on that and be more persuasive and like kinder in my tactics, but I'm going to want to be blunt. And so we'll see how that plays out.
Well, give me some of those blunt readings on your other contestants. You say that they could read you. Let's flip the Uno reverse card here, because I'm sure you've been sitting with nothing but your thoughts for the past few days, and I'm sure you have plenty about your competition. So on the positive side, who are some people right now that you're picking up good vibes from? That like, perfect scenario, day one, this is someone that I hit the beach and I could be my ride or die with.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people I'm getting some good vibes from. Honestly, there's a ton, but it's like, it's hard because it's still very much so vibes. I don't know if they're going to be my ride or die, but I'm trying to think of how to describe them. It sucks because I really actually don't like it when people compare current contestants to past contestants as if we're
Mm.
all just like one big cookie cutter. But all I have is like looks for right now and kind of vibes. Tentatively, there's like someone who's reminding me of Austin from season 45. Like he just seems like he's very like happy go lucky, great positive energy. Like I am so excited to get to know him. There is also this woman who is here, and I was so impressed because after we did survivor safety school, when they give us some like survival tips and
Hmm.
tricks, and then they gave us a little packet for it to study. She didn't look at the packet. She was like, I got this. I'm good. It's all fine. I would love to have her on my tribe. I feel like she knows how to build a shelter.
Who's
And
this? Who's this? Describe this to me, because I'm intrigued now.
absolutely. Um, she is someone who has like tan skin. She has her hair up in a bun frequently. And she just has like a very stoic, positive energy too. Like I'm just excited to get to know her as like a human being, honestly. Um, is that enough of a description, maybe?
Definitely. I'm gonna go over to the other side though, because I'm sure there are some people that you're not exactly feeling out. Do you have any descriptors for those?
Yep. Yeah, I have one. Oh, also the woman, I just now remembered. Her
Oh, sure.
initials are TH, by the way. I'm trying to remember people's initials. So
TH, you
her
said?
initials are TH, yes.
Okay.
And the initials of someone who I'm intrigued by, and not in a, like a very positive way. His initials are SP. And so here's the thing. I feel he's someone where I think he knows his first impression is a little bit of maybe like a jock. Maybe he comes across as a little stern. But what he's doing is the book that he's brought here is like a Sarah J. Maas game of, I think it's called Thorn of Glass or something. Basically, it's a chick fic book. Like it is a book that's all the rage right now. Or the women are reading it. They're loving it. I'm reading one of her books as well.
My
But
my my wife has Throne of Glass, I think, in our bedroom right
yes,
now.
yes, and it's good, but it's an absolute chick flick. And what I think he's doing, and I've actually seen guys do this before, is they're like, "Oh, I have depth to me. Look at me read this book." And so he like, keeps like flashing it around for everyone to see. But I'm watching him; he's not even really reading it. He's like this way, like through, and he's just assuming that he can like throw around this book, and we'll all be like, "Wow, he has so much depth." So I've been debating whether or not I want to show him that I'm reading one of those books. But my hot take, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, is that like I don't know if he'll, based on how the fact he's not reading the book, I don't know if he's going to respect people who read Sarah J. Maas. I wonder if he's reading it and just thinking like, man, this is trash. I wonder who reads this. So I don't know. I don't trust him.
I'm gonna keep you on the hot take train right now. What is your most controversial Survivor opinion? Give me your hottest take on a player, a season, the show itself.
Okay. I have a bit of a hot take with the direction I think the show is like going in at the moment right now. And as a
Mm.
heads up, like as I'm sure like you know, but for other people listening, we currently are in the middle of season 46. We don't know what happens. The point where we are in right now, everyone is talking about how they need to make their big move and it needs to be their move and solely their move and everyone needs credit for it. And like so many of these big moves are stupid. Like they're not good for people's game. Like you should not be getting out your number one ally way too soon. Like just because something is a big flashy move doesn't mean that it's a good move. So I think that that's something right now where it's like, oh, it's grinding my gears a little bit. I don't feel like people are as irritated as me are because they're like, I'm here for strategy. I'm here for smart gameplay. And I think when it's best is when you don't, the players don't know about it till the final tribal, and then it all makes sense, like how devious and strategic and smart it all was. Like that's the game I want to play. I don't want to just do something that's big and flashy and then I go home the next like episode.
Last thing I want to ask, if you could bring a fictional character or a celebrity out for a loved one's visit, who are you bringing and why?
Okay, can I do Survivor celebrity?
You can do that, absolutely. It's your loved one's visit.
Okay, good. Because like my dream alliance partner is Christian Hubicki. I would love to have him. I feel like we would kill it on a season
You
together.
want to play in the sand with him?
Oh, absolutely. We're playing in the sland. We're talking about Slam Town, what like positions we would be. But he's just like perfect. He's someone where it's like you can vent to him and he's like good with you emotionally and he'll help you calm down. And then you can actually talk strategy with him. And I feel like he'd help me even see other angles and perspectives I haven't seen before. It's like 100% Christian Hubicki.
Yeah, and listen, he could keep you occupied for hours upon hours. If you want to know about macarons, he's your guy.
Oh, absolutely. Again, we've just been sitting here 8 hours a day, like just staring at people. I would love having like Christian Hubicki tell me about like what physics or something, like 100%.
Well, this was such a great time getting to chat about things. I know that it's obviously a lot of hurry up and wait for you, a lot of anticipation, and I'm just so excited. I'm anticipating what you're going to do in this game. It seems like you have a really good grasp on obviously, where you come from and where you are now, and I think where you're going to. And I think where you're going is going to be a really fun, exciting place for the next 26 days.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm so excited. It's going to be a blast.
All right, Mike. There you go. There's Caroline, and interested to see how she's gonna go.
Yes, sweet Caroline. Blunt,
Will it be
blunt,
sweet
blunt. because she is blunt, according to her.
Yes, and so were Andre 3000 and Big Boy.
Yes, exactly. There was a lot imbibing there. If you ever watched the music video for the aforementioned, what was it, Roses, I think was the song that had Caroline as a fixture there. So, I mean, speaking of that,
but did you like the way she moved? That's a little suggestive. Did you like the way she made big moves?
Yes, exactly. That has you saying, hey-ya, from the jury. So when it comes to Caroline, I don't know, maybe it is that bluntness that she brought up, or the fact that she freaking name dropped her. But Rob, I can't help but think a little bit Emily Flippin when talking with Caroline here.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense that might have been what they were going for. I mean, Emily was a hugely popular character. They're casting Survivor 46 right at the time that's airing. People really respond to that. So I do think that Caroline could be in the Emily mold, at least in terms of maybe that's what casting was seeing in her. But we'll see how it ultimately goes for her. I am very interested to see the person that she was talking about with the book. Can you give me some more insight into this?
So it's SP, which is Sam, who, luckily for his sake, I suppose is not on the same tribe as her, because if they were on the same beach, she would immediately call him out. And that's the thing. Again, people, keep doing this. I love when people stick their neck out there, but that's what we love about Survivor players in general, right? You're ready to make big moves from the beginning, which includes trying to play this 3D chess that Sam brought this book, Throne of Glass, which is apparently, quote, chick fic, and she tries to work through the
Throne of Glass.
Throne of Glass, exactly.
What's it about?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to see if I don't think I have it on my shelf over here. I'm pretty sure Angela has it up on her bookshelf upstairs. But it's I think it is taking place in perhaps similar to an Iron Throne, but an even worse place to sit as a ruler. It does take place in sort of like that medieval, mystical type of era. But what's interesting from her perspective is like, she quite literally feels like she can read them like a book of, okay, you're only
like a Throne of Glass?
Exactly. You're so transparent, Sam, like a throne of glass. I can see right through you. I know that you're just doing this to come across like you're deep and you're not this huge jock, bro. But I know you haven't even read it, dude. I'm going to give you a book report as soon as we step on the beach together.
Yeah. Imagine like he's like, oh my God, I love Throne of Glass. He's super into it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, it'd be like, for example, if someone saw Charlie listening to Taylor Swift in the 46th precinct and was like, God, oh, such a poser.
He's on the first track.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So who knows? I mean, I certainly did not talk about the works of Sarah A.J. Maas with Sam anytime soon. And maybe he was just using this as an opportunity to crack into some literature, not realizing he was so heavily judged by this person, who was then also saying like, oh, but maybe he's also using it to make fun of the people that are reading the book that he also brought to Ponderosa.
I don't think he's trying to make fun of them. I think he's like, okay, that these are like, I need to, get women to want to work with me. And if I have this book, but as Tori that she mentioned tried with Harry Potter, like if you don't know the subject material, like I don't want to have conversations with people about stuff that I'm just pretending to know about.
So Sam going to walk up to the women on Gata and be like, Throne of Glass, am I right? And just see how they respond.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy. I mean, what's Selena up to next?
Yeah, they're like, well, she might perform at the Olympics later on this summer. That hasn't happened yet.
She's got the King's Championship or what?
I would love that if they formed an alliance around their love around Throne of Glass. But at this moment, Caroline is also, scoping out someone who will be on her tribe, at least, which is nice to have. She was really vibing with the girl who went to Survivor School, right? Got the DL on what to do and not to do in nature, and was given the TH was given the big book and said like TBH. I'm not reading it, and that is
yeah. Tell me.
That's Tiana, who we're going to talk about in the last day here, who is on her tribe.
All right. I like it when they talk about people we've already met.
Yeah, I know. Well, for you, it's like a big mystery.
Mystery box. Yeah,
exactly.
Much like the Throne of Glass.
No, again, you can see right into the mystery box if it's a Throne of Glass. Yeah. Not a lot of
that's true.
Not a lot of obfuscation.
Okay,
there.
and much like the protagonist of the Throne of Glass, if she can defeat almost 23 killers, she's got a shot at this thing.
Rob, Caroline hates you so much right now. You're doing exactly what she says Sam is doing. You're trying to come
That's
across
true.
like you know it, just to
Mhm.
make conversation. You're not
That's fair.
true dyed-in-the-wool fan.
Okay. Look, maybe my wife might be into this, much like your wife.
Yeah, listen, I could use this as a backdoor book recommendation section of movies to watch, books to suggest to others. I mean, I would say usually I go off of the celebrity loved one question as well to check out any works that I haven't seen, but suffice it to say I have seen quite a good amount of Christian Hubicki, which was her choice of loved one.
Right. So that would be a good loved one.
Oh, I think that would be an incredible loved one.
I had a lot of nice talks with Christian over the years, so that would.
Yeah, she could have her own one-on-one Ask Dr. Hubicki.
Yeah. All right. So let's see how it goes for Caroline. I think that generally, though, the bluntness, like the lesson from Emily, I think is that when Emily was her most blunt self, that they were going to vote her out of the tribe. That it was when she got together with Caleb and started to see oh, I've seen that I need to change my game up a little bit. That was where she had success. So I think a little bluntness is good.
Yeah. Listen, you don't want to be completely cutting, but at the same time, you don't want to be so blunt that you're cutting in a very different direction. And her referencing both Emily and Tori, they did both have respectable finishes, but the vast majority of their game was not necessarily in a place of safety. And especially in the pre-merge, both really struggled in positions where if one or two things go differently, they end up going out super early rather than how they did. And so, yeah, I do hope that she is able to kind of pick up where the two of them left off in approaching the game with a bit more of a curbed personality from that bluntness perspective, because I don't necessarily know if the third time could be the charm for a personality type like this.
Okay. All right. Let's see how it goes for Caroline. All right. We are going to talk about another member of the Tuku tribe. We're going to talk about Gabe. And Gabe wants to reclaim the Survivor game he watched growing up. We'll hear about how he plans to do it when we come back right after this. All right, Mike, let's talk a little bit about Gabe.
Yes, so Gabe Ortis.
First Gabe since Marquesas?
Yes, exactly, and has a similar bouncing locks to the man once upon a time, Gabriel Cade. Maybe, the story, right, is that Gabriel Cade reapplied to Survivor and wasn't recognized until very late in the process. Maybe he's done it again this time around. It's been over 20 years since, but...
Well, messed up, Gabe.
Well, even though this Gabe is second of his name...
Not this one. Yeah, first one.
He plans to be first of his kind here. This is a guy who was, I believe, the very first person to speak in the 47 teaser we saw at the end of the 46 finale, where he already emblazoned his face on the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, Mount Rushmore, the new era. That was this guy?
That was Gabe, which is interesting. I guess that's the good thing about Mount Rushmore as a monument at the time, was that they kind of had to stop at Roosevelt. They couldn't necessarily update it without a lot of provisional funds from the government. It's not a whiteboard, it's stone. But the new era is something that's always growing, ever changing, including the list of faces on the Mount Rushmore. And Gabe plans to be one of them, as you mentioned, he is willing to bring this one-of-a-kind, legacy-filled game that also simultaneously will hopefully be a love letter to the seasons that we grew up on.
Okay. All right. Now, he grew up on different seasons than you or I might have grown up on.
Yeah, he is 26 years old, so maybe not necessarily as dyed-in-the-wool from the beginning as you and I were, considering that he was, 1 year old when Richard Hatch won?
Yeah. Technically growing up.
Yeah, technically growing up, but Gabe is from Maryland, from Baltimore. We get into a lot of that in our interview. And even though at the time we are speaking, he is a barback, his resume is littered with a lot of really interesting work that he had to leave to hopefully pick up $1 million paycheck.
All right, let's check out Mike's interview with Gabe and come back and talk about how we think he's going to do.
Well, just to start things off, let's take it nice and easy. Why don't you give me your name, age, and occupation?
My name's Gabe Ortis. I'm 26 years old, and I'm currently working as a barback in Baltimore City.
Nice. Have you been working in bars for long? What ended up having you behind the counter?
So I was actually working as a communications director on a mayoral campaign in Baltimore City. And right before that, I was hosting my own talk show on the radio in Baltimore for about 2 years. And then I ended up having to leave those jobs to prep for Survivor. So my stopgap in between was I've been working bar back gigs for the past couple of months. And I figured that's going to be a much easier sell to people on the island is that I'm just a bar back man. Then, I've worked in politics and I had a talk show and all this and that. So I'm not lying, but I'm not telling the whole truth.
Your resume is basically like The Wire. It's like I worked in Baltimore in politics and I worked in in media as well. That's so interesting. Talk to me about that journey that you took because it does feel like two sides of like what kind of is admittedly the same coin.
Yeah, man. I mean, I knew back in high school I always wanted to work in broadcasting. There was a day where me and my buddy went up to the press box at our high school during a soccer game. And they would live stream all the games for the alumni and the people who donated to the soccer team. And we found two headsets in a box one day and just plugged it in and just started calling the game. And it was like the director of athletics or something like that came in and just started reaming into us and was like, what the hell are you guys doing? We have donors on here, we have alumni on here. What are you saying? And then he looked in the little comment section of the live stream and everybody was like, oh my God, these guys are great. Why is this the first game that they've been here? Blah, blah, blah. And so from that moment, I always knew I wanted to work in broadcasting. So I went to college for it in Maryland. And through a series of odd jobs, in that industry here and there, I ended up landing my own show in Baltimore. And 3 days a week, I was talking politics and current events, and 2 days a week, I was talking sports. And I did that for 2 years, and it's to this day probably my favorite job I've ever had. It was awesome. I took callers every single day. I've never felt more in tune with my city than doing that, and just getting to talk about the city and all the cool things going on. And eventually I thought, hey, I could use a little bit more cash coming in for how long I've been doing this. And we weren't able to figure something out. But within a week of me leaving that, somebody reached out and said, hey, this big mayoral candidate in Baltimore is running again. And she's looking to build her team. And she put you on the short list for comms director if you want to come interview for it. And I got the job and I did that for pretty much the entire campaign. And I had to leave to come here like weeks before election day. So I'm going to have no idea what happened on this project I was working on for like 7 months of my life. And then when I get back, I'll get to see if she won or not. So that's going to be very exciting. But admittedly, not where my mind's at right now.
Well, I would imagine the skill set of having the ability to talk to so many different people combined with the knowledge and immersion in politics makes it perfect for Survivor. But what made you decide to come out here to leave that campaign behind? How long have you been watching the show, and what made you decide to sort of like submit yourself for your own election, as it were?
So, I mean, I was one of the kids who every Thursday night back in the day, me and my family would be huddled around the TV and, we'd be watching every single Thursday. And then I fell off of it for a while. And I think it's pretty interesting because you have, this group of fans who are with the show from the beginning, right? They're watching it weekly on TV since Richard Hatch won in season one. But then you have this new generation of fan that's watching all the same episodes, but through the streaming services and binge watching it. And I find myself in a very unique position because I have both sides of this coin, right? When I was a kid in my childhood, I was watching it weekly as the show was coming out. And then all the seasons I missed over the past couple of years, I've caught up on through the streaming services and through binging it. So I mean, I've seen every season one way or another, whether it was came out or whether it was on 10-hour-long binges in my living room with my roommates. So I mean, I'm just about as big of a fan as I think you could be. I've seen pretty much every season of the show, sans a couple seasons. And I mean, I love it, man, and I love the game. You mentioned The Wire. One of the biggest quotes from The Wire, one of my favorite quotes from The Wire. It's like, I don't do this for the money. I do it because I love the game, man. I love it so much. And that's my mentality when I'm out here is that I want my game to be a reclamation of the game that I fell in love with when I was a kid, and that I'm sure a lot of people out here fell in love with when they were a kid. I want it to be a love letter to people who have been watching the show since the beginning and look at the foundation of Survivor. And, some people see the bits of it that have survived, and some people wonder where some of it still is. And I want people to say, oh, that's where it is. It's with Gabe and the way that he plays the game.
Well, let's talk about penning that love letter perhaps to some Survivor figures from seasons past. Give me a winner and a non-winner who you identify with the most, be it from seasons you watched back in the day or ones you recently blitzed through.
Sure. So I'm happy to answer this question. And my one, I don't want to say issue, but my caveat with these kinds of questions is that I really don't want anybody to look at my game and say, oh, he's like X, Y, and Z, or oh, he really
Mm.
played like this person. I want people to say that about other people in regards to me. After I'm done, I
Mm.
want people to say, he played like Gabe. Like, wow, that was a Gabe style game, or clearly he's trying to be like Gabe. So I want to make my own story. I don't want to be on somebody else's player tree. I want to start growing my own tree of players that come after me that try and emulate. But to answer your question, because it is a fun question, there's no doubt, and I do love answering it. As just a fun brain exercise. But in terms of one winner, Jeremy, that's the guy who I mean, Jeff always says what's his biggest piece of advice he gives every season: play Survivor your first time like it's your second time. I don't think there's any player in the history of Survivor that had more growth from their first season to their second season than Jeremy.
Mm.
Obviously, he's the first merge boot. He's the Mayor Ponderosa in his first season. His second season, he goes on to win. But you can see the small intricacies of how he changed his game from 1 to 2. I mean, it's like a completely different person got casted to go play. And his winning game is by far my favorite winning game I've ever seen. He pioneered so many different things that are now commonplace in Survivor. And more importantly than that, he was able to so acutely look at the weaknesses in his game the first time and either eradicate them or turn them into strengths the second time around. So,
Mm.
I mean, that is like Jeremy, I hold in very, very high regard in my Survivor lore, if you will. In terms of a non-winner that I'd like to emulate, um, this one's always tough for me, because there's so many good answers. I mean, the Hall of Fame of Survivor is littered with players that have never won and
Mm-hmm.
and probably could win if they make it all the way. I mean, when I look back at my childhood, the player that I was the most excited to watch every single week was definitely Russell Hantz. So even if my attitude and maybe my strategic approach isn't quite the same as Russell's is or was, I hope that I can give that excitement to people that are watching.
Mm.
He was must-watch TV. He completely dominated over the course of 2 seasons. Maybe not necessarily in gameplay, depending on who you ask, but in terms of screen time and cult of personality, he dominated season 19 and 20. One of those, a lot of people say, is one of the best seasons ever. So I mean, I hope that I can emulate that idea,
Mm.
that energy, that electricity that he brought to the game, and most importantly, the fun that he had playing. I mean, one of his quotes from Samoa is, "I didn't come here to work. I came here to play." So I kind of want to bring a bit of that, and I want people to have fun vicariously through me watching. So I'll give that as my other answer.
Well, let's talk about the electricity you hope to generate here, your unique voltage, to your point. What would you say is your greatest superpower and your greatest piece of kryptonite that you are bringing into this game?
My greatest superpower, I would say, is my ability to read people. I think a lot of folks, who meet me and probably are watching this interview one day, would assume that I would say my ability to talk, from
Mm.
working in politics and having a talk show and, all this and that. But I think the reason that I have a lot of confidence in my ability to talk is because of my ability to listen. And I think that ever since I was a young kid, even dealing with like adults, teachers, and parents and things like that, I always kind of had this ability to meet them at their level. Um, and I think that's something that I'm bringing into this game that a lot of other people aren't good at or aren't as good as they think they are. And I hope I'm not, jinxing myself by saying that. Um, but my ability to read people and my ability to kind of tell those little body language things when people kind of squint their eyes, or when they look away, or when they shift their posture, or when they start fidgeting, or things like that, or just in the way they talk, their cadence, all these things is a treasure trove of information of what somebody's thinking, if somebody's telling the truth, if somebody's telling the truth, if somebody's lying, somebody is telling the truth but isn't giving you the full truth. Like, all these little things are really important. And these are things that have come to me very innately since I was a young kid. So I would say that's definitely my biggest superpower. My biggest kryptonite,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people struggle with this answer. I would say it's not living presently enough, thinking too much about what's going to come next, and thinking too much about what came before. And I think Survivor is a game where you have to absolutely be present all the time in an absolute way. And people who don't do that, if they think too much about what went wrong the night before, or are so enamored with what went right the night before, or are constantly thinking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days ahead, then the present escapes them. And when the present escapes you, anything can happen and you don't even see it coming. So I think that's something that I'm going to have to really be consciously thinking about all the time, is be present, be present, be present. What's happening right now? Forget about what happened yesterday. It's gone. It's over. Don't worry about what happened tomorrow. It hasn't happened yet. What's happening right now? Try and figure it out, and then worry about your next move.
Well, let's put your people reading skills to the test here, because
Okay.
I'm sure you've been sitting around with nothing but your thoughts and you've been gathering some on your competition here. So
Sure.
let's say, go to the positive side first. Who are some people that, best case scenario, day one, you're looking at them as like, these are people I could ride or die with to the end of the game?
Sure. The older woman on the cast, older blonde woman, I'm really hoping she's on my tribe day one. I really want to work with her. I think just older people in general, don't get so caught up in their emotions because they've experienced more, they lived more. And I think that would be good for me as a younger guy, because I can kind of ground myself, with that. And B, I think that in a cast of predominantly younger people, they're gonna naturally feel like outcast day one. They're gonna say, "Oh, well, I'm 20 years everyone's senior here. Where's my place with all these college, fresh out of college kids?" And I want to be the first person to extend that olive branch and say, "Hey, I'll be your best friend on this island if you ride with me to the end." So I'm really hoping that she can be on my tribe day one. That would be my number one overall draft pick, if you will. And then I'll throw one more person out there.
Yeah.
There's an Asian gentleman who, just through chance, we've kind of been sat next to each other in a lot of different things that we've done out here so far. So obviously they've been very strict, no communication and nothing like that, but there seems to just be a aura of recognizableness, if you will, if that's a word. But just an aura of familiarity. That's the word I'm looking for. Of like, okay, if I'm sitting, like, I've sat next to this guy more than anybody else so far, So clearly, like, if something funny happens, or like just the other day, as a little behind the scenes, we had a bird swoop down on one of the other contestants' tables, and it started picking at our food, and then it flew away, and everybody was like, "Oh my!" We all everybody was kind of silently laughing to themselves. The first person I looked at was this guy, and we both kind of just gave each other, like, "Could you believe that just happened?" Kind of looked to each other, And I don't think I would be able to do that with anybody else. And I think that's just because, again, of the limited amount of time we've spent out here, I've kind of spent the most in that guy's region. So it's so hard to tell. It's such a hard question to answer because we don't know anything about each other. We haven't spoken, and we're all kind of just looking at each other sweat by the pool. But I would probably say those two are the two people who I early on have pegged as potential allies.
What about on the opposite side? Who are you planning to swoop down on, like that bird on that contestant's poor lunch?
So again, this is tough because, God forbid, I have pre-game enemies going in, and then they could be great allies, but I'm so stuck in my ways of like, no, this person needs to go. There's a younger blonde girl who's been walking around who, seems like a great person, but has been writing a lot and kind of has this tendency to look at somebody and then write. And
Mm.
so I'm like, okay, clearly you're making a lot of judgments about people, about every small thing that they do. And I don't know if it will necessarily translate into a productive game, but I think it will prove to be an erratic game. I
Mm.
think that's something that, like, this person got up and they turned away from their table in this way. What does that mean? And I think sometimes when you get caught up in all of those tiny little details, it's like you kind of miss the bigger picture of what's going on. And it's like, oh, well, is this person signaling that they don't want to work with me? Is this person trying to form an alliance with this person by turning that way in their chair? And it's like those people are erratic. And when erratic people and when chaotic people enter the game, I mean, 46 is on TV right now, so we can all see what erratic and chaotic people can do in a game of Survivor. They can blow up other people's game, and God forbid my game. So I'm kind of looking at the people who are taking a lot of notes pre-game, because I think that, and I've done, my fair bit of it, but I think when you're analyzing every little thing, and there's been a couple of people who have been doing that, I'm like, you know, that's not a good mindset to take into this game, because it just causes chaos. It causes paranoia within yourself, and paranoia within yourself spreads like a virus to everybody else. And I want to avoid those people as much as possible, or at least I want to avoid them and the folks I want to work with. So even if I don't necessarily take them out, at worst, I'm trying to get them out of the game. At best, I'm utilizing them as tools to create chaos to further my game.
What is your most controversial Survivor opinion? What's the hot take you got? I know you got one.
So, I mean, he's made 2 appearances now in this conversation with Russell Hands. Everybody looks at him as, and I wasn't there. Everybody has their stories
Mm.
about his attitude towards other players. Again, I don't know. But in terms of loyalty, everyone pegged him as like this sneaky, conniving player. In both games that he played, his 3rd season, he didn't make it deep enough to have much of an impact. In both games that he played initially, he took his pre-merge, like day 1 or 2 alliance to the very time. Exception Sandra, because he had to trade her out for Danielle, because Danielle had her breakdown at Tribal, that led to her boot. But if you were part of Russell's alliance early in the game, he was taking it to the end. Now, maybe it wasn't because he liked you or because he wanted to be friends with you or he respected you, probably just saw you as a tool. But regardless, that loyalty was unbelievably strong. And I don't think that he gets that perception very often, or if at all. He was a very, very loyal player to both of his alliances, in both Heroes versus Villains and in Samoa. But he has, because of his, missing tooth smile and Southern draw and, idle sneakiness, and the way that he went after opposing alliances. Yes, he was
Mm.
very sneaky. And yes, he lied a lot. And yes, he was very conniving when it came to opposing alliances. But that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're very untrustworthy and unloyal if you're doing to the people who you told at day 1 we're going to work together. But if you're trying to get my people out, like, yeah, I'm going to lie, cheat, and steal to do anything I can to get you out. So I think he deserves a little more credit for being a loyal alliance member, particularly in season 19, and I would argue in season 20 as well.
Last thing I want to ask, if you could bring a celebrity or a fictional character out for a loved one's visit, who are you picking and why?
Sugar Ray Lewis, no question. Number 52, the general from the Baltimore Ravens, greatest player in Baltimore Ravens history, best middle linebacker in the history of football. That is a guy who could, I mean, he could get me pumped up to eat a ham sandwich. Like the speeches that guy could give, and the ability he had to get people to run through brick walls for him, and for themselves, more importantly, is unparalleled. And obviously, you got that Baltimore connection, but especially when that loved one visit hits, they have a way of doing it. When it's like when you're at your lowest point and when you're ready to give up, and when you're at your most tired. And if I could have Ray Lewis come out the tunnel and hit me with a pump up speech beforehand, come on, everyone get out the way. I'm winning if that's happening.
I mean, it sounds like that's the attitude you're perfectly bringing into this, man. Like you are shot out of a cannon, and I say that in the best way possible. You have such passion for what you do and what you love, and that is so palpable here. I mean, you have such reverence for the game, and like you said, it's something you want to translate to your gameplay, and it makes me so excited to watch what you get to do, let alone probably how you're feeling in this moment. So I know it's probably all pins and needles, anxiety, just waiting for it to happen. But this was such a great chat, and I wish you the best, not only in these days leading up to it, but it itself.
Hey, Mike, I really, really appreciate it. It's an honor and a bucket list item for me to be able to sit down here and talk to you. So thank you, man.
All right, Mike, there you have it. There's Gabe, and he's ready to go and looking for Ray Lewis to come in. And boy, if you love Ray Lewis, there's a little show called Beyond the Edge that I've podcasted about. You should go check it out.
What an algorithm you are, Rob. Just recommending shows. And this is exactly, if Caroline recommended Throne of Glass to you, you're paying it forward and recommending Beyond the Edge to Gabe for all his love of Ray Lewis. And it's interesting, he talked about...
he could really motivate all sorts of people like Jodie Sweetin to do incredible things.
Yeah, just wait until the pep talk he gives to Meta World Peace. It'll change you. Well, it's interesting, though, because... Gabe talks about how Ray Lewis, ran through people like brick walls. Gabe has actually been stonewalling people at Ponderosa. As you recall from some of our previous conversations, Rob, some of the players had been talking about a particular guy who has just been giving them nothing or has been averting eye contact. From what I've been able to glean, the vast majority of these perceptions were about Gabe himself. And so despite obviously coming in with this very fun, passionate energy for Survivor, I think he's given them a lot of intensity before the game starts.
Interesting. What do you think he's going for?
I don't know if he's going for an intimidation tactic. If, as we talked about a couple days ago, if he's just more so really wanting to follow the rules to the letter of the law and not even give away anything to anybody, be it a wink or a smile, or maybe he's just trying to come across as unreadable. That was one of the things that he talked about in my interview with him, was he did not want to give too much stock into what people were doing. So then maybe he's trying to manifest it in his own way and be like, I'm going to be practically unreadable so that you don't read too much into it, because that's something that can make you erratic and someone I don't want to work with. Okay.
He speaks very highly of Russell Hantz, and he didn't get, I feel like, into too many specifics of the bringing back the type of game he watched as a kid. But do you think that he could be a Russell type?
It's interesting because, what he clarified for me was that it wasn't necessarily for him the way that Russell treated people, especially. It was more so that he wanted to capture the meta level of energy around Russell. That it was this idea that he brought so many people, including yourself, back into the fold, that he really was, again, this once-in-a-lifetime player that everyone on and off the island was talking about. I think that's more so what he's speaking towards, though he does pontificate on a very interesting take on Russell's game in his hot take, right? Which is this idea of, well, listen, Russell did say, if you're not with me, you're against me. So if you're with Russell and he thinks he could beat you in the end, you're pretty locked in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He says that Russell was very loyal to his people. So, I mean, that's really just the rub there of trying to figure out if you are one of the people or not. Had a lot of interesting things in his background, including doing radio and working in politics as a comms director. So has an interesting set of skills. Now, boy, I hope the subject of Derrick Henry doesn't come up between Gabe and Sam.
Well, I'm trying to remember when the trade happened, because I think it actually
I don't believe it was a trade. I thought it was a free agent acquisition.
Okay, March 12th is when the Ravens signed over Derrick Henry. So would have been a little fresh on the mind. It would have been a little less than a couple months.
You flipped. Yeah. Just like Derrick Henry.
I mean, this could be the new Q hearing that Mariah's favorite player is Aubrey and targeting her because of that, in terms of just really speaking to things that exist outside of Survivor as a way to go after somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll see.
No, it depends. If the NFL season plays out in a certain way, then I think, Gabe goes back to Sam being like, take him back, please.
All right. He seems to have bonded with Saul.
How so? I'm trying to think of what
was it not Saul? Who was he referring to?
With the Asian gentleman who they've sat next to each other. It's either him or Baby Andy.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Could be either. I thought he was speaking more like it was. And my mind went to Saul first, but maybe could be Andy. He talked about an older woman. She's on this tribe too, right?
Yes, that would be Sue, which is great. That is Gabe's day one plan, is that he wants to find her just because she has more life experience than him, even though he has like a pretty stacked life experience so far, considering everything he's done at just 26. But at the same time, he's also thinking, well, she's going to stick out like a sore thumb because she's an older person amongst a cast of fairly young people. So let me be the one to kind of like take her under my wing and move forward, much like a raven.
Okay. Mike, then there's a blonde journaler. He did not like what she was putting down, either in the journal or at Ponderosa. Who's this?
Yeah, so this was someone we talked about yesterday. This was Sierra. Remember, Sierra was the one who also noticed that Sam was taking a lot of notes and was like, oh, let me pay attention to that. And so it's obvious that, her journaling as well has been clocked by someone like Gabe. And yeah, he has a really interesting way of looking at it of, okay, if you're almost getting in your head already on day -3 about so-and-so turned in their chair this way, what does that mean? That could make you a bit less of a reliable ally, because while it makes you observational, it also makes you derive opinions from the smallest things that could happen.
Okay. All right. Mike, anything else about Gabe?
So I think Gabe is going to be an incredibly entertaining player. That seems to be his MO first and foremost. Not to mention, as we've talked about with a bunch of other broadcasters in the course of this cast, coincidentally enough, like he knows how to make a soundbite. He's incredibly well-spoken. He knows how to carry on a conversation to make an entertaining moment. What I do worry about with Gabe is his MO for being out there more focused on the way he will be remembered than what he's out there to do this season.
Mm-hmm.
He even spoke about this, right? As his kryptonite is not staying present, is thinking too far ahead or too far back. And maybe, he's just feeding what got him cast in the first place, which is these big, bold declarations of, oh, I'm going to be this player that you've never seen before, that everyone's going to talk about afterwards as, oh, this person reminds me of a Gabe. But I do worry if that is your, modus operandi going out to play initially, is to just make big moves and be remembered. Those don't always correspond to winning the season as well.
Yeah, ask Russell.
Yeah, that's true as well. It actually would be interesting if he ends up making it to the end and succumbs to a very similar fate as Russell. So I think no matter how long Gabe lasts, he is going to be a very fun character. And I do think he has like enough communication skills and a capacity and like a young, affable energy about him to get pretty decent into the game. I could also see him getting into a situation, though, where he feels like he has to make a big move. Maybe he pulls something out of what we were just witnessing in 46 and actually something that Caroline mentioned as her hot take, right? Which is like, I don't understand why people are taking out their number one allies. Don't make big moves just for the sake of big moves. Gabe is maybe the person on this cast who is most likely to succumb to that.
Okay. All right. Mike, who are we talking about tomorrow?
All right, well, tomorrow we talk about going from one person who stood out in the preseason for a number of reasons to two other people who have been clocked in largely positive ways. We are talking about Kyle and the aforementioned Sue.
Oh, can't wait. All right. So very excited for that. Make sure you don't miss any of our preview coverage by subscribing to the podcast. Just want to make sure you get everything that you are entitled to as a Survivor fan. So just double check, make sure that the subscribe button is working on all your devices. It's at robhasawebsite.com/subscribe. Okay, Mike, what's coming up for you on Parade?
Well, if you wanted to experience the gloriousness of my interviews with Asia and Genevieve all over again, feel free to check them out in written form over at parade.com. And you can get a sneak peek at all the other talks with the Tuku tribe, as those are up in written form as well.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.